aku aku akan cuba share secara general biasanya apa soalan-soalan yang biasanya kami sebagai interviewer untuk front end, and biasanya benda-benda macam ni sama ada company-company besar yang betul-betul detail berkaitan dengan front end. Siap letak gambar sih, betul. Ataupun biasanya company-company yang biasanya ada aware pasal I would say apa front end development lah. Biasanya company-company yang tekankan berkaitan dengan front end development, especially kecil-kecil ke apa semua yang banyak hire front end ni, biasanya company yang agak tekankan berkaitan dengan branding lah. So kalau tanya aku nak kata front end tu penting, dia depend kepada company, dia bukanlah semua penting. But tonight aku akan cuba bincangkan beberapa konsep dalam front end yang biasanya interview akan look into lah. And bukan bermakna bila aku beritahu ni this is kind of like one straight answer. Sebab as we progress, teknologi pun berkembang secara pesat lah. And ada banyak lagi option yang kita ada dalam front end. Even until now pun sekarang masih ada lagi pembaruan. Tapi aku tak nak lah malam ni jadi argument macam React versus Vue versus Angular. Even the founder of all these front end framework pun dah start kata tolonglah jangan gaduh pasal the different in syntax lah, line paling banyak lah apa semua. But focus more on how we can improve the okay. Alright. So, okay, I will share the screen. I will share the screen. Kita akan cuba dapat yang paling terbaik sebab kita dah dapat tier 3, so kita dapat share yang full. Alright, so okay, let's go. So untuk malam ni aku akan bedah artikel by Malcolm Key berkaitan dengan penulisan dia lah. And kalau boleh jangan tanya benda-benda back end lah. Aku bukan tak nak jawab tapi sebab malam ni aku nak fokus pada front end sahaja dululah. Alright, so sekejap aku cuba zoom in. Kot kalau korang tak baca. Alright, so biasanya this is a kind of several aspect yang kita review bila kita nak interview. Sekejap aku pindah bahaya. Okay, pindah kat sini. Alright, so even dekat sini pun Malcolm Key ada cakap although it's not an ideal process for candidate because it's time consuming, tapi kita boleh kata kita boleh dapat directly instead of macam kita tanya apa gunaan use state, apa gunaan use effect. So kat sini dia highlightkan lah it is a closer simulation of the actual work of the role compared to the other processes like live coding. Sebab bagi aku live coding ni kalau kita nak test immediate skill, maksudnya macam theoretical boleh, tapi bila kita nak try to scope into more bigger aspect of the front end, it's better untuk nak ada code assignment. Tapi of course it depends on how critical it is lah. Sebab lain company lain dia punya criticality of the front end. Sebab kita tak tahu dia punya front end skill dia macam mana. Ada front end, ada company dia just sekadar nak spin the front end, you connect to the back end is already okay. Ada company yang perlukan massive calculation. Ada company yang perlukan huge animation macam contoh WebGL and everything. Ada company yang perlukan kepada high customization. Ada company yang memerlukan kepada micro front end, contohnya module federation. Kita ada island architecture, banyak lah. So bukanlah satu this kind of like absolute rule to kita nak decide sama ada dia adalah successful front end developer lah. Tapi I would treat this as a part where, sebab selalu kan aku dapat soalan, kalau aku front end, macam mana aku nak improve diri aku, what kind of thing yang aku nak belajar. So this is kind of a good way of how you want to find a topic ataupun a domain ataupun a niche dalam front end untuk kau nak improvekan diri korang. Tapi yes, I kind of agree dengan Malcolm Key punya disclaimer. This is not adopted by employers, of employers, in which now dia adalah Canva. Even even dekat company aku sekarang ni pun tak adalah kita orang adopt secara direct apa yang perlu di test, sebab lain hiring manager, lain requirement dia. So tapi kita orang ada satu one thing we call as developer matrix, developer competency matrix, DCM. So daripada situ kita akan tahu, okay, kalau untuk front end atau back end, sama ada dia junior ke, sama ada dia ni mid ke, sama ada dia senior, kita tahu. So ada certain yang kita orang kita orang boleh tolerate, ada certain benda yang korang wajib tahu, dan ada certain kalau korang tahu as a bonus lah. Alright. And this is dia jangan beritahu lah dia punya experience, tapi bagi aku based on apa yang aku baca artikel dia, and ada gila artikel baru yang dia tulis, mostly apa yang aku experience lebih kurang lah. Dia tak ada nak kata sama, tak ada nak kata lain sangat, tapi dia lebih kurang. Alright. So kat sini dalam artikel ni dia banyak bagi tahu, dia banyak letak skor lah. Kalau tengok dekat setiap bahagian 20 point nak bagi tahu, oh this is important, and then it becomes more and more less important lah. Tapi it's a good point kalau you guys nak try to explore. Alright, kalau korang ada nak tanya soalan, I would say korang boleh angkat tangan ke apa. Malcolm ada ke? Oh shit, Malcolm. Sorry. Wait, I did pass. Sorry, Malcolm. Okay. Alright, so for the first point, I think it's not just front end project. I think this is more on the general part of the development by itself. So the first point, like, it works according to requirement is like any project that we do, whether it's React project ke, Vue project ke, anything lah, even a different language pun, as long as you understand the requirement, as long as you can extract from a requirement to become more and more details, that will be a good point for you. So because like there is some part that you have to understand from the requirement itself. Even like even macam I would say from my experience in my current company is that even right now we are in the midst of quarter planning. So we have to break out into this kind of, okay, we are the product owner, like give a brief on what kind of things we need to deliver on our product. So biasanya of course dekat diorang dah break up from the problem into the solution, what kind of vision that they have. Lepas tu diorang pecahkan pada requirement. But it doesn't stop there. Dia when it comes to a technical person like front end, you have to understand ada beberapa two several parts. Satu, biasanya what kind of stuff, what kind of tools that you need. It doesn't have to be specifically React or Vue or Angular or anything. It can be something like, benda ni perlukan live data ke, benda ni perlukan intervention daripada cross team ke, benda ni perlukan optimization in term of processes ke. All these things you need to understand. You need to break down into all these things so that you can identify several things like dependency issues. Lepas tu like some of like it needs a design spec. Kalau contohnya let's say your company have their own dedicated designers. Lepas tu kalau let's say if you have any dependency for server part, you have to make sure like you want to make sure that including the test documentation. Alright, so that's why this is kind of like, macam mana nak cakap, you have to understand that when as you start the development, you already introduce what we call as technical debt. So you have to admit all these things. You have to calculate all this, like whatever you have, whatever dependency that you have, and whatever things that you are missing, whether is it intentional or not. So this is the part that I love. Malcolm mentioned that it's important to at least mention the missing requirement in your README to show that it's intentional instead of entirely missing it out due to carelessness. So usually it's kind of like, of course, it takes some experience for you to actually see all this part of the missing part of the development. But if you have the senior, if you have your mentors or whatever, you try to have some discussion. Sometimes like it might be like energy consuming to actually discuss about it, but try to be more attentive when discussing about all these things lah. So make sure it match to your requirement, whether it's technical or not, whether it's functional or not, functional requirement or non-functional requirement. From there, you try to discover the bottleneck so that you know that, okay, because like every project has requirement, every project has the timeline as well. So you have to be balanced both of the parts. Not like macam okay lah, you tahu okay you're the project, so you kind of like short sendiri, you put all the very cool tools that you feel like people can will be like I would say macam wow lah, astonished into whatever tools that you use. But in the end, it's all about the deliverables on the correct timeline. So you have to make to consider all those things, right? All right. So the second part is the good abstraction. You know, as a junior myself, like sometimes like kadang-kadang even for myself, right? During my junior time, I feel like I want to code. I want to make my code very simple, but then because of you don't have this kind of understanding of how the code structure should be, right? So and then you find out that hey, you need to do the abstraction. So as you become more and learn more about all those things, suddenly you try to abstract everything, in which it becomes more and more complex and costs you a lot of time to actually maintain it. Then of course when you work more in more projects and you feel like hey, there are some abstraction you have to sacrifice so that you have to, it's kind of like the most important part about software development is you are the one who dealing with complexity, but in the same time you have to remove as much complexity as possible, because like when we develop in a team, we have to think about the other member of your team as well, whether it is readable, whether it's maintainable, whether it will cost some time to actually explore the other tools that you see when you are introducing a dependency. So all right, so the first point, let's say abstraction components, right? So data table components that can be used to render any table instead of the user data table. Sebab it's kind of like this is the part that I learned. I don't know, because I developed this kind of opinion where there should be like five level of components, and then I suddenly discover atomic design, whatever, right? So this is kind of like I kind of agree, because like you have to think about reusability instead of like you want to specifically use for a specific part, like user data table, which is specified for the user data. So if let's say if you create the data table and then you just abstract whatever needed, don't over abstract your code. So you can actually use data table for the other thing, like probably let's say for the e-commerce, you can do for product, you can use for delivery, you can use for all these things. So you don't have to create like product data table, user data table, delivery data table, right? So it doesn't have to be that specific. Probably you guys are interested to explore more about the atomic design, kind of like to create a mental model on how you want to develop your component. So I think that would be a good way for you to structure your code. Because I've been in a company where there's another, because at that time I'm still a junior. I see someone who, like, I don't know, probably eight level of components. I have to go really deep into the component to find where the bugs comes in. And then yeah, I feel it's very time consuming. I feel very uh, frustrated to actually debug the front end part. All right. And yeah, this abstraction underlying component, like copy function that abstract the usage of the document as a copy and navigator copy. So you don't have to be like specifically for the other things. So this is just example, right? It doesn't have to be like this. It can be like, um, let's say you want to create a store, right? So I mean the store for the state management. So let's say you want to create probably like, okay, let's say we have multiple type of products, right? So let's say we have let's say fast moving product like foods, like drinks, or probably more on the toiletries, like, you know, the soap and everything. So all these things you don't have to be specifically cater for different kind of category. Sometimes you just have to be like find more, but like the same mentality of how you want to create the OP. So but it doesn't have to be purely the same thought. It can, I mean, you have to experience it first, and then you kind of the part of whether you want to abstract further or not. You have to force yourself to not oversimplify or not over complicated stuff, right? As long as it is usable. um all right, so the next part, the next part of the important part is idiomatic TypeScript. So as if let's say you don't know what is TypeScript, it is a type system for the JavaScript. It's just a transpiler. Of course, it introduces more a bit of complexity in terms of you have to compile the code to the JavaScript and everything, but it helps developer to actually helps the more on the developer experience side instead of like improving the code. Yeah, but even for me personally, I would go for TypeScript just um because like there's a part where when we introduce a function, when we try to abstract a function, right? We have to know um what kind of parameters that it accept, how many it is, and what kind of the output, whether it's inferred or not. So instead of like after you do all the function, you have to document it somewhere else. Um, it would be good that if you understand TypeScript, so that it will automatically create somehow like a documentation for you, and it will help a lot in developer experience. Like when I call the function, then I know whether this data is actually valid for the parameters or not, whether it's optional or not, whether it can be can the type can be more generic. Let's say if I'm not sure whether you have an experience in use state in React, where you have to, you can let it infer the type. Let's say um wait, let me try to Excalibur. Okay, ignore this part. um let's say um let's say you want to start state, right? Let's say tools, um to probably set tool, use state. um all right, so let's say if you if you, I think it's better for me to actually just demo it on the code itself. Wait for a while. No, 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 nope. Responsive page. Should I? Let me try to get my own repository. Let's close the Twitter for a while. So I don't do much. All right, just ignore the bottom part and everything. Yep. Let us. I hope it will be a bit clear. That kecil sangat ke tulisan ni ke? Okay. Mana? Terlebih besar. Yo, jap. So waktu kelas dia kena besar kan supaya nampak. Alright, so let's say constant let's say 2 set 2 ataupun set 2 sama dengan use state. So sekejap supposedly tak boleh ni sebab this is oh boleh, okay. Okay, so let's say if you try to declare like this, right? So there is no data you pass to the use state, so of course it will pass as undefined because like you don't it automatically infer it. But let's say you want to make it like probably after this it will be updated as a number, so you call this as a number. So actually this part is actually, it comes from the generic, so you can actually go to the use state. You can go to how the use state calls. If let's say you don't pass anything, it will automatically defaulted to undefined. So if you, let's say you want to dictate as a number, so you have to detect number, and then if you see the tool will be number or undefined. But of course, if you start declare, let's say 4 here, it will become a number and no longer undefined. So let's say if you want to set the set tool here, oops, sorry. So you cannot pass something like this, right? So this is just a basic part, but I think the difficult part is not about using it, but actually to use the TypeScript to help you in terms of understanding how TypeScript really helps you in terms of create the generic, especially when you want to develop a library. So I can show you. Let's say I'm not sure whether I do it this here. Oh, probably wait. No, mungkin sini. Kejap Alright. So this is the part yang, because like I want to make okay, let's say I have a list of category of my tools, right? I have a front end, back end, full stack, database, styling, tooling, architecture, productivity, and others. But I want to convert it as I would say as a literal types. If you want to know what is literal types, it will be like something like literal type, something like name, probably like something like Atif, Afri, probably whoever it is, Ahmad, right? So this is we call as a literal type. So if let's say if you try to use anything other than that, let's say I declare name equals to maybe welcome, right? Sorry, I use it. So of course you will throw an error because like it should be either one of these, right? So what I'm doing here is that I will use this. I list all these things as an array. So okay, let's say let us try to remove all the as a constant first, and let's see what's happened. All right. So here, if I used an array of strings, right, and then I try to hover this constant to category string, right. So now the type of the two category inferred as a list of string. But when I try to try to export type to category here, and then it will still as a string. But what if I want to log all this part of the data as a fixed value, as a type? So what I have to do is I declare as constant, right? So when you hover to the tool category, instead of you get string, you get the read only. So actually the as constant is like try to create the read only type of the string here. All right. So, but of course I don't want to make it as a read only here. So I try to export the type to category here, so that I will get the literal type of all the arrays. So let's say if I want to introduce another uh the reason why I make it like this way is that, so if I want to iterate based on this string, I can just import the tool category instead of this thing, but I can still get the type that inferred from here. But as a part of the type checking, so I'll create a type here, tool category, so that from here I create a category that is a tool category, which should be one of this part. So I don't have to declare another literal types. So I can just add another part of it, and then as you can see, if let's say I use something like, even like for the VS Code, if you click the control space, you can actually look into what probably. Yeah, so you can see all these values: architecture, backend, database, front end, full stack, others. So that's why I really like the fact that TypeScript helps a lot in terms of um all this documentation. I don't have an example for the generic part of the TypeScript, such as like what you see from the use state just now. Okay, but I just want to show you, this is an example for the generic. Where's the use state? Suddenly it's missing. Uh, all right. So this is actually generic, right? So it takes as a template. Okay, we call it a template, and then of course we should expect one value that should be initial state, which is the type S, right? So that is why when you declare just now, you declare as a number, so you should expect as a number. So if you manage to actually create your own generic functions, generic function type, that means that you know a lot about TypeScript. Of course, like just a basic type like string, numbers, um, and even if you know the difference between like something like unknown, never, that would be like a boost of your understanding in TypeScript. So um, if you if it's kind of like I like the part where Malcolm say here, although it's I'm not giving a lot of weight to TypeScript, but I believe that it is a good indicator of a candidate ability to write good JavaScript code. So it's kind of like you have to be careful first before you type a code. You have to really think about it before you introduce your code. All right. Okay. Proceed with that. We start to look into more or less way, which is the documentation. Although like sometimes I feel like documentation can be a bit low, but yeah, I think it deserves like 15 points as well. So I know that most of the developer didn't like to write documentation, because like documentation is just like you are away from the code. You have to be like more human. You have to use a human language to explain what are you doing right now, and probably step by step on how you want to how you want to, let's say, install your project, what kind of things that you have to do. But personally, I don't think that will be the case, because I really like to write the articles. Even like I wrote the articles on the DevTo. Even in my company, I also like do some writing on the technical feasibilities, all these things. So it's kind of like me have to force myself to write it so that I can understand what I'm dealing with. So this is the thing, what I like about documentation, right? Um, the same way of how I view TypeScript that helps me to actually think what my code should be structured like. The documentation is actually helping me to structure my. Okay, let's say I want to, let's say I have a zero knowledge about uh I have a zero knowledge about let's say JavaScript. So just imagine you have to tell all those things to the non-JavaScript guys. But of course, if you, let's say if you develop a, let's say if you develop a library, of course you have to expect someone to understand about npm. So you have to first to understand who is your audience of your documentation, and the second from there you have to really structure your your content so that your when you want to explain something, you have to, let's say you have to use some techniques to actually um portray or deliver your content. So let's say, okay, I want to tell people how to, let's say, the repository that I have just now. Um, how can other developers want to start, let's say, do the development? So of course you have to explain step by step, like, hey, you have to clone first, and then you have to npm install, and then you have to probably do the other stuff first before development, and probably you have to also explain how to introduce the variables, how you do want to do the deployment, how you want to do all this stuff, so that um, everyone else have the same level of knowledge when they want to use that kind of thing. So that's why I love I love to do the documentation. Even like when I do some of the codes, probably not here, because like for me, because this is my code only, so I don't really do the internal documentation here. But let's say we go for uh of course README is one of them. But let's say I want to say that, okay, let's say I try to create the function to filter based on category, right? So of course, your code should be as readable. I mean, as readable as possible, so that you don't have to explain about it. But let's say if you have to, it's kind of like too complex for you to make your code readable. Actually, you can just use like this kind of thing. We call the JS docs. You can even like use like, let's say this function will filter, but this is not a good example. Okay, I have to highlight this is not a good example. Okay, but just to give you some idea on how you want to improve your documentation. So then it doesn't have documentation, it doesn't have to be readme or something, it can be somewhere else as well. So this function will filter the tools by category, right? So let's say further in your code you want to use the function. So let's say constant tools, sorry, my tools equal to get tool by category, right? So when you try to highlight it, of course I need to pass the category. Let's say front end, right? So when I try to hover it, so I can actually understand, okay, this function will filter the tools by the category. And even you can actually use different part of the JS doc, like all these things that you see. So you can see that if let's say you use a class, use a constant, let's say there's a construct, description. If let's say it's deprecated, you can actually mark it as deprecated. So so let's say when the developer use the function, they know that they don't have to use it because it's deprecated. So this is one of the documentation technique that you have to know. And yeah, of course, README you have to, because right now I'm using a default README documentation. So yeah, all right. Screenshot of the UI that inserted into the README file, instruction to run the project, yeah, the basic one, and technical decision made, right? When let's say you want to use as he say, like React hook form instead of forming, And let's say for me, why I use 10 stack query instead of SWC and all this stuff that we have in npm, you know, because like people say new months, new framework, new months, new libraries, so you have to look into it, and of course sometimes you have to spend some time to have something like POC, proof of concept, so you will understand what kind of indicators that you look into when you choose a library, whether it's about security, whether it's about maintainability, maintenance, whether the library is maintained or not, whether the syntax is fairly understandable, whether the documentation for the library itself. So you have to highlight those as well in your documentation. All right. Okay. Okay. Let's move to the next part of the point that is highlighted here. Is a project structure and file convention. All right. So for the before I go into I go deep into this part because like I see like it's quite a long one. You need to understand that convention is not like obligatory for all developers, of course, right? When you want to develop your own personal project, of course you can use any kind of structures, any kind of file convention that you want. But when we work in a team, when we want to work under a company, of course they evaluate all this kind of thing. So that is why the project structure and file convention is important here, because like it's not to just, you know, it's not just like, I would say the convention is like unwritten, established, an official rule, so that when the other engineer or the other developer come to the project, they straightway understand, hey, if you want to find a component, we should go to this folder, right? If you want to look into pages, we have to go to this pages folder. And some of the frameworks, like let's say Next.js, Next.js established a different kind of folder structure. Let's say for Nuxt.js, which is the meta framework for Vue, they also have a different kind of project structure as well. So you have to look into this like to so that if let's say if you follow the convention, that means you it's kind of like uh us interviewers understand that, hey, we can, you know, I don't have to ask you to document all this stuff because it's already you already use a convention that is already established, so that it's kind of like you have a common knowledge of what the project structure should be. And even like I would say this is not like one day that you can understand all this stuff, but of course different company have a different project structure, because like some of them use like monorepo, some of them use let's say the island architecture, they have a different kind of folder structure. um Hydration use a different kind of folder structure like Next.js. So all these things you have to look into it, like you have to experience it, see how people do it. One way of it, you can go to the GitHub of all the Next.js project, probably React project, how they do it. Of course you have to follow whoever like credible to understand how the structure should be, right? So yeah, usually like this is some of the convention that usually us developer follows. Like sometimes like there's a like business specific code, or probably a niche specific code. Let's say here is like when he say here, don't put all the component inside component folder. You can use component folder for generic UI components like button, or probably all other basic component stuff. And you can, if let's say if you want to use a specific part for, let's say, hey, I want to put this stuff on the let's say let's say for the e-commerce, right? So the product, so it's better for you to put under like modules product, or probably pages product. So you have to manage all your components there. so you can use it on your pages later on. So for me, like I use the like somehow and atomic design rules, where in my components I use, I think in my even in my latest one I use the part. So for the components, I only put the atom, molecule, and organism. But for the pages and the layout, I will look into this up, because like in Next.js they have a different kind of. You have to put the layout here, and then some of the like you, if you want to create a section of your page, you have to create a section of your page here. So all those stuff, as long as you uh split between the constants, then yeah, it's good to go. But don't try to split everything too much. Sometimes you have to know when to stop, but it requires experience for you to do so. A file naming convention that optimize the developer experience, such as like index TS or TSX, or if let's say uh, this one, let's say if you want to specific for user data table, you have to use specific user data table, so that, because okay, this is one part that I learned from my senior. There is one um there is one convention we call as a Scream architecture. I don't know what's the name is. Probably anyone knows what is a Scream stuff. Because like when you look into the file structure, it already scream at you, hey, this is company, this is for user, this is for product, this is for authentication. I forgot what's the name. That's the term, scream architecture, I suppose. Probably let me try to, like yeah, scream architecture. So like the name, as the name suggests, that you have to make sure when you try to name, um we kind of like, you name the file so that it will scream at you, so straight away the developer understand what is inside the file, right? Yeah, but it's highlighted here. If you use an opinionated framework like Angular, this is less important for the framework itself. Provide project structure and file convention, because like, as I say in the beginning, different kind of framework have a different kind of project structure and file convention. So as long as you follow the convention in that specific frameworks, then I think it's okay. It's important that you lean slightly towards over organization when it comes to project assignment. Although in your actual project with a small code base, you probably can get away with a flat folder, but be mindful that as you scale up, when you deal with a real large project, especially for me, like doing all those like module federation stuff, we have a monorepo. I think some of us who works in MNC that deals with a big project, this will be extremely important for you to actually manage your folder structure. All right. And then test. I wouldn't say, yeah, but I'm okay with the 10 points. I mean, sometimes people kind of like to emphasize on tests, especially when the beginners want to learn about the TDD and stuff. You have to know that there is no code in the world that is 100% covered by the test. It's impossible. Even if you reach 80%, I already feel that you are a god. Sorry, okay. I mean, it's it's nearly impossible for you to have 100% coverage. Because like, even the test itself can be, I would say the test itself can be something that costs you can the test itself can be a tech debt. Because like, let's say if you have 80% test coverage, but your test somehow do something wrong, or probably is not consistent, like people say it as a fragmented testing, so it will cost you more than it will save your code base. So that is the important part when we want to introduce the testing. So usually like it depends on the implementation of the project. Sometimes they just they want to use the unit testing. Sometimes they want to focus on the contract testing. Sometimes they want to focus on integration testing. Sometimes they just go all the way to end-to-end testing or regression or whatever smoke test. Because like if you work as a QA, supposedly you should understand a lot of the testing part. Although testing tool like JavaScript ecosystem has improved tremendously, I still see many front-end project without any tests. Yep. I would expect a front-end engineer to be familiar with testing tools and write tests for their code. It doesn't have to be 100% coverage, but at least write a few tests to show the quality of your test code. So like um, let's say you want to extract the tools just now, right? So of course you have to test your functions. Of course, my code I tried the test. Sorry, but in my company, of course, I have to. All right. So try to be as isolated as possible if you want to write the unit test. So sometimes like you just try to test some of your code base so that it will indicate that you really take care of your code, and not just that, probably you might use that for the refactoring and everything. Right, my pet peeve, candidate giving excuse that they didn't write any test because they are time constrained. For someone that is familiar with testing tool, it less than an hour to set up a testing framework and write a few tests. Because like the test doesn't have to be that big. Even if you want to test whether the function return the right input output is already okay. Let's say you know the function just sum two numbers. Just you import the function, you throw two parameters, and then you assert whether the value should be correct. Then I think it's already okay. So yeah, if you don't know, just admit it. Right. Okay. So next will be a development automation, right? We have a lot of automation tools nowadays, especially like if you install the CRA, although it's not recommended right now. If you, let's say, using Vite or anything, or probably you use a Meta framework. Of course, it comes it already I mean it already comes together with all these automated tools like Prettier, ESLint. Especially when you use the TypeScript, it will bring the TSLint as well. But let's say you develop a project from the scratch, right? You don't use any building tool. Probably you just introduce a React by yourself, like you install React, you install everything. So I wouldn't say like you have to know everything about the automation tools, but try to be aware of the tools that we have. Because like I don't know, people kind of like uh downplaying the power of awareness. But even if as a developers, you have to at least know, you have to at least aware, not just like, oh, the ESLint is there. You have to at least aware what ESLint is doing, right? Of course, if you go for mid or uh senior, of course you have to know how to configure your ESLint and Prettier, um right? um yeah, any automation tools, like let's say you use like GitHub, like let's say, what's the name of GitHub again? I forgot what's the name. Let's say you know about the pipelines, CI/CD pipeline. Let's say Jenkins, Circle CI, GitLab, CI/CD, or GitHub Action. It will be a very good, very very good point if let's say you know that, because like that means that you you actually, how should I say, because like you don't want to spend your time on maintaining everything manually. Of course you want to depend on some of the automation tools to help you solve the mundane tasks, like whether you have a semicolon or not, whether you are using a double quote or single quote, whether you use a two space or four space or tab, whatever argument that is in the outside, right? So if you know, then that means you it's kind of like you really take care of your code somehow, right? So the usage of the SLM Prettier, all right. And then here at the script to package JSON, Yeah, I would agree because like even for us, like we have to set up a different script for different environment because like we have to develop a library that supports React. We have to develop a library that supports React React version under 17 and below. We have to also consider like how we want to port out to non-React development using UMD or CJS or MJS. So we have to have a lot of scripts inside our code. So if you know how to put your script, I mean, just if you want to try, just let's say Echo is already okay, but at least try to be familiar with adding the script in package.json. Set up CI/CD automate deployment, right? Compared to other items in this list, this is the least important one. Yep, because in most company there are usually senior engineers that will be responsible for them. However, it is still a plus point for a software engineer to know to show that you care about your work, right? So at least if you don't know how to use it, you should be aware of the existence of this stuff. Like you know what is ESLint is doing, what is Prete is doing, what's the difference between two. Let's say if you use Webpack, what is Webpack? You don't have to know how to. If let's say if you are going for a junior, you don't have to know what is capability of Webpack. As long as you know what Webpack is for. If let's say I ask you what is the difference between a bundler and compiler, then you have to to know what is it. Whether you know how to use it or not, it can be a different case. But if you go for mid or senior, you should already I should already expect you to know a lot of stuff. What doesn't matter? Yes, I think this will be a very my favorite part because like when I go for a meet before I am in my current position, actually some of this stuff I actually take care of it. But then, as your experience work in a different kind of repositories, then you realize that, hey, this is not that is not important. But at least if you can say, okay, it's good, but I don't really think that that would be important because like in the end, when you go to the company, most of this stuff you can just choose, right? So the choice between the equivalent tools, like let's say, here he say create versus Vite. Of course, Vue, you have Vite on Vite for now. Jest versus Vitesse, or probably Mocha, or probably Chai. Puppeteer versus Playwright, or probably Playwright, probably Cypress or anything, right? It doesn't have to be this kind of option as long as you, because like in the end when you work into a project, whether we have this or we have this, you can actually choose it. But the what matters is that whether whether you know that how you want to test your code, whether you know what it comes with, like let's say for the ESLint and all the stuff. Let's say if you want to test what kind of test coverage that you want to look out for. So here choosing the specific tool from a few compatible tools is mostly a matter of preference. This is the important part, mostly a matter of preference. Usually the juniors and mid always argue about this and whether you heard of them. So it's not very useful when evaluating a front engineer. However, it does matter if you include a type of tool to achieve a specific requirement, right? So let's say if you want to adding a testing framework itself, let's say if you choose, if let's say if you use Jest, that means it's already give us some impression that hey, you actually know about testing. But of course, we want to see how you test your code, right? Um, and yeah, let's say if you want to spin a React project, I don't care whether you want to spin using Vite or create React app. I only care whether you know how do you structure your code, how do you structure your files, how do you import all those files, how do you um, probably utilize whatever tools that you have to help you uh, develop a product, all those things. Whether you use the latest library or language feature, right? Yeah, sometimes like, yeah, this one I also like. to see new library tools as a way to show that they are up to date, especially like let's say lately I seen a library what called let's say 10 stack, right? We have a lot of 10 stack right now. So let's say it doesn't have to be between Redux with just now, it doesn't have to be a Redux versus Zeus 10, because Zeus 10 is much more latest, not latest, but it's 2 years already. But all this stuff, like you want to show that hey, you actually up to date to the latest trend. However, in a real world project, it's not always a good idea to use the latest library or tools. That's why, like, usually when I want to measure the culture, because I'm the bar raiser in my current company, but specific for the front end. I always ask, like, if let's say you are in a position where you have to decide what kind of library or dependency you want to choose, whether it's a between a shiny tools, whether it's a old tools, whether it's any tools that you have been heard of. So what kind of decision that you have to, what kind of decision you want to take when you think about this? So this kind of mentality, especially for us mid to senior, you have to already have it, because like you have to make sure that your project is uh because like the thing that you want to focus when you develop the product is you want to deliver a product, not because of you want to because you choose a latest React version, you want to choose a latest next version, you want to choose the latest tool that we have out there, right? It always have to be whether you manage to deliver a product, whether you can match whatever you have in the design spec, whether you can match the requirement that is given to you. So all these things is more important than instead of like you choose the latest version or not. So yeah, as you say, it may be not stable enough or have enough documentation to support it, unless listed as assignment requirement. Let's say in the assignment itself it state that hey, you have to use, because like some of the part that let's say for the React version 17 and 18, there is a lot of breaking changes. So I have to because like even for my case, when I develop a Web3 component, so most of the Web3 component is using the React 17 and above. And when you develop a project that is using React 18, you have to kind of like to find a library that is specifically for React 18, because like React 18 is no longer I would say that is not the right word, straightforward. Because like React 18 introduced a concurrency, and even their way of doing the rendering is different. So sometimes I need to know whether they understand what's the difference between React 17 and 18. But of course, when it comes to develop project, you have to wait the cost when you introduce this kind of like versions, whether it's a latest version or not. In other words, using latest library tools could be detrimental, as the interviewer may not be familiar with, and it may take more time for them to understand your code. Right. The key takeaway is that feel free to choose a library or use a certain language feature because you are familiar with it or you want to learn it, but don't do it because you think it will help to improving the rating of the assignment. So just be yourself when you're given the assignment. You don't have to like, I would say, of course, you want to impress the interviewer or the evaluator of the assignment, but um, but don't try to focus more on the impression part, but focus more on your own quality, your current quality that you have right now. So you don't have to use any latest library. All right. So yeah, here you can see the general part of how he put the weightage of each part of the item for when we do the assignment. All right. And then here, one thing that you may realize is I'm missing some important skill such as CSS and accessibility, right? Because like he say here where I see yeah, even once you learn the fundamentals, they are not something that impacts the output for front end product engineer significantly. Even if you are applying for a front end engineer role that are responsible for the front end architecture design system, then it will be a different story. Yes, because like I also do hire someone to not hire, like I'm assisting the hiring manager to actually try to find a front end developer, although it takes a lot of time for me to actually evaluate it for developing a design system for the current company. So of course I'm expecting the candidate to be very good in CSS, because like it could cause the other project, because like they have to know how the CSS should behave, especially when it involves a very complex animations, and even some of the part they have to involve I mean not the design system, they also have a different project that they have to introduce a WebGL a little bit, so that's why I need them to know specific about the CSS. So unless the requirement is there, um the CSS is not that impactful. Sometimes I just like just play around asking the candidate, hey, do you know how to center a div? I'm not really looking into it, but I just want to know whether they are aware. That's it, right? But it's not that I mean it's not that critical when it comes to CSS, so you don't have to worry about it. Even the accessibility is so remote. Even though I emphasize myself to look into accessibility. I mean try to learn about accessibility, right? But not every project should have accessibility in the first place. Of course, I always tell about semantics. I will always talk. Always say about um event bubbling or some sort, so that you know uh we always align to the accessibility standards like YARIA. But it doesn't have to be important. Like if you use div all the way, it doesn't means that it doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing, right? So yeah, improving the score, right? Here are my suggestion on how to improve each of them. Not that suggestion are what worked for me instead of what I think I could work, and they may not be the best resource today, but they did help me to improve in those item checklist. All right. How to ensure you fulfill the requirements. So this is the skill that usually like new developer like rarely look into it, because like they say, hey, I just want to develop it, that's it. But then when it comes to requirement, you have to always always never look down on each of the requirement, because like sometimes you just miss the point. And I really like my product owner right now, because like even though we see a lot of stuff when we do the planning, he also like very attentively asking, hey, whether this is good or not, and this thing, right? All right, reread the requirement and make a checklist, right? It's kind of like in for us we have something like DOR, definition of ready, so that if let's say if I want to take a single requirement, so I want to know what should be there when I can say, hey, I can take this requirement. So make sure you go through each of them and check it off once you have done it, or added a comment to explain why you didn't do it. So like for my experience, like we have a requirement given by the PO previously with a different PO, and then we say that, hey, we cannot take this requirement because it is not clear enough. We don't know what kind of like blockers that we are dealing with, and there are some requirement that say, hey, we have to do a technical feasibility study first, or POC, before we actually take this, because like right now is uncertain, is unknown for me. So you have to be straight with your team, with whoever like you are dealing with, like your product owner. You have to be very straight, you have to be transparent. So tell them why you want you cannot do it. If let's say if your like if you cannot do it, then you should explain why you cannot do it, right? And ask friends. It doesn't have to be friends lah. It can be someone like other. I would say the other eyes, like probably if you have a mentor, you can ask your mentor. If you have someone who knows, but yeah, but even the Malcolm say here, your friend don't have to be expert. By just trying to set up the project, they could discover basic issues like missing dependencies or unclear documentation, right? So as long as you have a second brain to actually help you discovering what you're missing, how to create a good abstraction. All right. Even I think I see Malcolm already comment on the chat. This is not a skill that you can learn overnight. Even like I it's hard for me to actually explain, but it takes me a lot of coding stuff, a lot of projects, a lot of years of doing the coding to actually understand what is a good abstraction, what is a bad abstraction. Right? Read a good technical books. Right? Refactoring version 1. You can actually okay, I think it's better for me to just put it in this link to the here. Right? Alright. Refactoring version 1 and the code complete here. Two books are that I enjoy with plenty of tips and suggestions that are actionable. And then read what abstraction are created in the open source project and see how they abstract their code. Yeah, I already mentioned just now. I used to read FBJS and pick into utilities packages of popular libraries like Material UI. Even like if you want, you can just install a library and then you can go to the code and see how they do it, right? You can look into it. A lot of good open source project you can actually look into. How to write idiomatic TypeScript. Yeah, you can try to refactor code from JavaScript to TypeScript or removing any. Yeah, this is the I would say this is one of the important part. Try to avoid any at all costs. Because like of course during my starting years using the TypeScript, I wish I can use any for all those things, but then I do some reading and say, hey, if you are doing any in your TypeScript, that means it is better for you to not use TypeScript at all. So so try to remove any from your code base. At one time you will feel like there's a blockers because you have to define a lot of kind of types. So that is the time probably you want to explore generics, you want to explore the utility types, you want to explore some kind of like assertion, some kind of inferred types. So there's a lot of things that you can learn from the TypeScript. One file at a time. Okay, one file at a time. This is the part. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be. You can. You have to change everything, right? In my opinion, this is the best way to learn TypeScript. Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I also go through the same way. As you will learn the language features when you need them, and you will learn how to use them in a real project. Read effective TypeScript and start applying them. And for me, I use what's the article by Matt Pocock? I forgot. Is it effective TypeScript? Total TypeScript. Yeah, he's also good. I mean, you can go through his courses and tips and articles if you want to. He give a lot of free tutorials. So yeah, you can go through it as well. Subscribe to the TypeScript blog. Yes, they are well written and with good examples. I have to admit that I don't understand everything they posted. Yeah, of course. It's for beginner in the beginning. Of course, you don't understand everything, especially when they do a very complex generic documentation. Right. All right. Go to the next point. How to improve a documentation. This is relatively simpler for a project assignment. All right. Find the template and fill in the blanks. Usually, like there's a lot of out there that provide a template. Probably you can just copy paste and then you change some of the parts, so at least it match with your project. The example that Malcolm give, like here, project title, getting started, and you see how to run the test, how to do the deployment, what is the authors. Usually like the author's license and acknowledgement is more for the open source, but yeah, it's good. It's good to use this template as well. To have a good project structure and file convention. All right, this is something that you need to shop around. Yeah, you need to go around, go into a lot of project and see which one works for you, and find one and stick with it. being intentional about your project structure and file convention is more important than the actual structure and convention you choose. Right. For React project, my go-to project structure is implemented here. Okay, let's see what project. Yeah, he's done in app. So usually like, yeah, you have all the configuration here. Let's say for the TS config, the tailwind is a standard one. And then for the SRC, you have certain like components. If you want to store the CSS here, if you have a like similar function, you can use lib or utils. It depends. It doesn't have to be like specific names. Modules, so that I know there is a modules of the parts, right? So I see there's a component, there's a data model or this the API, and then pages, right? For the pages, and then let's say if you have a type definition that requires you to that, right? So this is even for my project, I use the same convention, like but of course this is a next DFFs, but you have a component, you have data. This is because I use the internationalization, right? I have utils to have a common libraries. So because this is small project, so I don't really go into a lot of parts. So yeah, so as long as you know it's kind of like the folders screaming at you, then you're already good to go. Um mm-hmm. Yeah, the kebab case for all file names. Special case is for React components. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway. Okay, if you work with Angular before, you realize that almost everything in my structure is similar to Angular structure. Yep. Now even there are how to write a test. Yes, you have to go to Kenzie dots. Even I go through his course as well. Uh, you have to know all this testing approach that that we have in the market, and then of course as you progress to become a more experienced developer, you will try to you will understand that there are some part that is not needed for testing. I mean, not there are not some part that is not needed for testing. I mean, like there are some part that is not needed for unit testing, but is needed for the other testing as well. So but but you but in general, you have to learn testing anyway, so that we know that when we assess your assignment, that we know, hey, you actually take care of your code. How to automate development? As a simple one, just go for Prettier. Yeah, I agree most of the time. Prettier. Conclusion. Yep, they are currently out of topic, as this is not something that I will update over time. Please let me know you have suggestion if you have any question. Yeah, the owner of the article is here. You can ask him directly. Oh, I wish I can bring him up here. Where is he? Oh, okay. All right. Can I invite you, Malcolm? Or you don't want to talk? Okay, I don't want to. I prefer no. Okay. All right, sure. No worries. All right. So usually that okay, of course there are some other parts like even for because like oh shit, Michael Ming is also here. Damn. Okay. Sorry. Okay. This is what that usually us as interviewers um assess when we ask the candidate to do the assignments, right? But of course that is the part that we can evaluate based on the assignment. But when we talk about, let's say, the interviews, of course we look into a different part as well. Let's say your cultures, how do you understand the development process, how do you delegate if, let's say, you face the what up you how do you delegate something if, let's say, you don't know about something, right? Or you want to get a clearance of something. How do you how do you do that? When, of course, in the interviews there are some questions that you don't have the answer because like probably you don't explore it yet, or probably you don't really listen to a specific word. Let's say, do you know the atomic design? If you ask me, of course I don't know the word previously, now I know. But I always say to the other candidates, like I mean in a general space, not in during the interview, that um you have to try to it okay, it's not wrong for you to ask the interviewer, like can you give some hint of what it is, like let's say atomic design. Like if you say, can you give me some example of what is atomic design is, then I say, hey, there's some, like, small component, big component. Then you proceed on, okay, probably I can tell you based on my experience that, okay, blah 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 blah. That would be a good case as well, because like sometimes it doesn't have, because like somehow some of the developers unconsciously practice those things, but you don't know that there is such term of that. So actually you can use that. um um Other than that, whether like how to, let's say you have some differences, in term of, let's say there are let's say usually I ask the question to the to the candidate. Hey, let's say if you have the argument with your team, right? Say that, hey, we don't want to use this approach, we want to use the other approach, right? So how do you actually try to resolve this kind of issue? So you also have to see about this. Of course, a big company, we also look into, like, whether you are a good player, whether you are culturally aware, um, whether you are, I would say, whether you are um, probably a good team player. I already mentioned about it. Whether you have a very good soft skills, right? Um, because like some of us, like we need them to actually communicate a bit, although I know most of the developer doesn't like to communicate. It's kind of like kryptonite for a developer to go out and talk about it. But yeah, I can understand about it. But yeah, not just technical part, but I also like try to emphasize the cultural part as well, especially when I become the especially when I become the barazer, where I have to evaluate the cultural part. But yeah, sometimes, like, because like we have a referral program in my current company, so that when I try to refer someone, of course I cannot interview him. So yeah, I wish I can interview everyone, but I can't. All right, so I think that's it. Wait, now is a 10:35. Okay. Um, as I say, just now, is more on the, you know the first and very good point is, um to understand the requirement. It doesn't have to be you are the front end or not. It can be whether you are back end, whether you're full stack. If let's say if I give you assignment, right, you have to understand how do you break down the requirements. How do you identify whether there's a blockers or not? How do you identify how you can uh, delegate or elevate the part that you can do, right? So usually, like, I always say to the programmers newbie that, hey, if you don't have to think a lot about syntax, right? Syntax is just a syntax. If I ask you to jump to view, then you have to do a different way, right? But of course, now it's matters of preference. But knows your requirement, knows the process, how to break down the requirements. The most important part when we do the programming is the problem solving. This is the most critical skill that you should have. Of course, the code structures, your folder structures, your automation things, and we go for the less point, like let's say using the automated tools. Although it's not important, but it still helps you in terms of development, right? Um, all right. Do you guys have any question? Yeah, I know there's a lot of you guys say Angular versus React versus HTMX. Yeah, but I don't want to discuss about that. Of course, I just want to discuss like how do you excel in front end stuff. Okay. Um. Okay. So, do you have any question or probably you have any two cents you want to share at the stage? All right. React gaduh Angular. Please explain the importance of TDD dalam front end dev. Okay. Um. Okay. I try to explain what's the definition of TDD, and then I will try to give you my personal opinion. But it doesn't have to be you guys embracing my opinion, because I believe that everyone have a different opinion, right? Um, TDD is a part where you want to implement test first. You want to validate the requirement first before you do the development. So there's a part where we call before we go to the red green stuff, right? People always thought like TDD is always start from the red part first, but did forget about whenever you want to develop a product, it's always start with a requirement. So of course, when we want to embrace TDD, the first stuff that we need to actually see is okay, TDD is a test driven development. That means if you want to develop, it is it is based on the test that you have written. Okay, so here's the thing. Um, dia ada satu benda dalam TDD sebenarnya, kita panggil dia requirement testing. Okay, requirement testing ni di mana you get all this list of requirement, you break down into a smaller chunks that you can manage, and then you write the requirement in term of test. Okay, there are some tools that you can use. Antaranya you guna Gherkin. Kalau you nak explore Gherkin, okay, wait, let me go through it. Okay, Gherkin syntax. Kalau some of you tak familiar, Gherkin syntax ni is dia gunakan normal language untuk you nak describe the requirement. Dia lebih kurang macam you nak try to develop the user journey lah. So let's say kita nak buat feature, guess the word, right? So this is requirement, kita nak guess the word. So kita start the scenario. When scenario maker start the game, when the maker start the game, then the maker waits for the breaker to join. It's quite simple, right? So bila kita buat Gherkin ni, right, this is become a requirement. You become a user story. Then from there you develop the test. Okay, so the test, you call the function. Let's say start game function. Then you should expect something like, let's say, wait for breaker to join. Probably there's a state that you are waiting. So that's a simple way for you to, because like testing requirement should become from the natural language itself. Dia kena datang daripada bahasa manusia itu sendiri. Kalau manusia tak boleh nak faham that requirement, tak boleh nak faham requirement in term of human language, that means you didn't really translate everything to a code part. So what they do is that they try to change this Gherkin part to the unit test. Then from the unit test, itu yang dalam TDD dia datang konsep red green approach. So apa tu red green approach? Kita explain satu-satu, jangan sabar, nanti aku explain. Okay, alright. So kita mulakan dengan test. Of course test sebab tak ada apa-apa, of course dia akan jadi merah. Okay, so your task is you want to make from merah to green. Okay, you want to make sure that test is successful. Okay, so this is the part yang kita panggil sebagai TDD. Maknanya kita develop the code based on the test itself. Tapi as I emphasize just now, dia bukan start daripada test, dia start daripada requirement. Daripada requirement, kita translatekan into a test, kita create the test, kita panggil test suite. Lepas tu baru kita code based on the test. That is what we call the test-driven development. Alright. Tapi before I go to the question, of course a lot of debate dekat internet. So you guys can go. Even aku pun kejap lagi aku nak cerita pasal my personal opinion lah. Okay, but But anyway, um, of course, korang dah familiar dengan NaN-TDD lah. Maknanya macam korang just develop and then korang develop a test case to cover your code. And of course, in this kind of thing, there are some word that surface, like contoh code coverage. Sebab kadang-kadang ada orang fikir macam kita kalau boleh kita buat code coverage sebanyak yang mungkin, tapi dia lupa sebenarnya instead of you focus more on the coverage, you should focus more on the test quality. Sebab kadang-kadang you buatlah coverage besar mana pun, tapi in the end the quality is not there, so you actually test nothing. Okay. But anyway, kalau orang tanya boleh ke campur TDD dengan NaN-TDD, for me is more on the, how should I say, whether it's TDD or not, for me is aku panggil sebagai dia sama macam argument macam DevOps tau. So dia hanyalah culture, alright. Dia bukanlah one rule fits all. Maknanya kalau you want to do a TDD, you should do TDD from end to end. If you don't want to use a NaN-TDD, you have to use NaN-TDD from end to end. It doesn't have to be. Of course, you can mix, but tapi of course when you work into a company, you kind of look into this like, hey, you want to enforce a TDD or not, right? Okay, is being separated FUBE is still relevant or nowadays kena jadi full stack baru boleh pergi jauh in career? Jawapan aku, apa-apa pun it depends on the project. Dia bukanlah dia tak ada satu jawapan yang tepat. Kalau you do a small project ataupun medium project, I think it makes sense for you to make it like FE and BE as a monolithic. Maknanya semua duduk dalam satu stack. Tak ada masalah. Tapi when you want to scale up, let's say we are talking about an app scale like Facebook ataupun Grab lah. Okay, Grab yang paling relatable. It's hard for you to actually maintain everything in one stack. Sebab you have to also cater about the optimization, you have to also cater the separation of concern. So of course they will split between FE and BE. So dia tak ada konsep macam FE and BE in one place is the right answer ataupun FE separated dengan BE ada right answer. I cannot see I mean there is no such thing like relevant or not. It depends on the project scale. Alright, okay, back to the TDD part. Kalau sebab as I progress into my career, I start to feel like TDD is not really an answer to a quality software. Tapi dia macam ni. Kalau you nak implement TDD, you should be strict with it. Dia macam ni lah. Kalau you nak contoh lah, let's say you are contoh you go to the gym, right? Just to get a very fit, you know, all these abs or pectoral apalah, tak kisahlah apa jenis muscle yang ada. You want to be that kind of fit, you have to commit to the gym day to day. You tak boleh tiba-tiba you rasa okay tak apalah bulan ni aku tak nak exercise. It doesn't work that way. Sama juga dengan TDD atau tak TDD, if you really want to commit, it's better for you to commit from day one. You tak boleh tukar. Okay. So code dan baru automate test kan. So code dan betul, code and then baru automate test. Kita buat coverage lah. Kita panggil kita increase the coverage of the code. Sebab kalau TDD, of course dia punya coverage dia 100%, tapi bukan 100% lah, tapi dia punya coverage akan tinggi lah. Tapi when you start doing from coding and then you do the testing, then you will start looking at the metrics for the code coverage lah. Alright, so adakah aku practice unit testing even in my current company? Sometimes aku argue in the team where kenapa kita perlu buat testing at every layer of the development when we can do you know something like contract testing, right? Because what matters is that We want to know whatever that happens cross system. You want to know, or whether you let's say if you want to test the component, how do you want to test it? So if let's say even kalau aku nak buat unit testing pun, aku hanya buat unit testing untuk untuk the UI part je. Aku takkan buat unit testing untuk test the API atau apa semua. Biasanya aku akan go for contract testing. So it depends on your approach. It depends on the team. Of course, benda ni melibatkan discussion. Of course, it's have a lot of debates. So it doesn't have to be TDD is the real answer, or non-TDD is the real answer, ataupun all the like unit test is the real answer. No, it in the end it depends on your team, depends on your requirement, depends on your quality that you want to implement. It doesn't have to be like you need to implement everything. Of course, when the first time you heard about unit testing, okay lah, you feel like you have to cover everything with unit test. Ataupun you learn about Cypress end-to-end testing, so you want to use end-to-end testing instead of unit testing. It doesn't like say that okay, dia adalah kena buat unit end-to-end testing, ataupun dia kena buat unit testing sahaja. Dia tak ada. It can be mix of all of them. Dia bukanlah satu jawapan fix all. Yeah, I think yang lain tu is up to debatable lah. Siapa-siapa yang baru nak code ni, jangan rasa pressure lah. Of course lah, most of the developer dapat dekat Twitter, diorang akan argue all these thing lah. Kadang-kadang diorang just go for the hype, especially looking into Theo Theo dengan Primogen lah. So just take it as a grain of salt lah. Of course, you can learn a lot from them lah. They are actually a great developer, but take it as a grain of salt lah, right? Bring it good. Okay. Jangan mikir nak switch juga, jadi FE asyik kena kecam je. Kalau tak buat unit test, how do you expect your function output as per desired? Biasanya aku boleh go for functional test, sebab bila aku nak trigger function, aku nak expect if let's say I trigger from one side, it should be macam ni lah. Sebab there are a lot of approach in testing, right? Especially if you're QA, you know a lot of it. And especially kita ada banyak sangat testing tool. Kita ada K6, kita orang ada Cypress, kita orang ada Playwright, kita orang ada Jest dengan React Testing Library. Kita orang ada testing lagi apa? Kita orang ada Packful, kita orang ada Postman Mock Service. Kita orang banyak a lot of testing tool, tapi takkan nak semua at every layer. So biasanya if let's say they need, kalau ada requirement dia kata okay kita kena ikut UI, then I will write the unit test. Tapi kalau untuk macam contoh kita nak kalau melibatkan function, kita orang hanya fokus dekat integration testing. Kalau benda tu melibatkan API, kita orang fokus on the contract testing. You guys can look into it. If let's say I want to look into, let's say ni ada satu benda kita panggil smoke testing. So kita orang guna smoke testing tools. Lepas tu of course when we want to push to production, kita orang kena run regression test. So kita orang buat dekat test flight. Lepas tu bukan test flight, sorry, test rail. Lepas tu of course dekat API kita nak keep the consistency, kena buat rate limiting and all those thing lah. So kita orang guna K6. Kita orang ada monitor yang kita orang ada benda nak monitor the API punya traffic, kita orang guna curator. So it doesn't have to be like one satu approach of testing fits all. Tak. Of course, for now mungkin you rasa macam okay lah, you want to use unit testing, but somehow in the future you feel like kenapa nak kena test 5-6 kali untuk satu benda yang you rasa you dah. But of course you have to develop a really reliable test suite lah for that specific test case. Alright. Okay, worst tak all effort of the E2E testing semua ni, and macam mana dev manage the workload while needing to deliver. For me, there is no specific answer. It depends. Okay. Dia even from the beginning aku cakap benda ni depend kepada requirement of the project. It doesn't have to be kalau aku jawab sekarang, it match whatever you are having right now. Sama juga macam orang kata GraphQL ni kadang-kadang dia overcomplicated, but somehow it works for Netflix. So it doesn't have to be one answer fits all. Even if you want to choose your architecture, contoh, let's say if you feel like Redis works for your architecture, then it works for your architecture. It doesn't have to be you want to choose PubSub, ataupun it doesn't have to be you want to use RabbitMQ, because it just a choice of your architecture. Same juga dengan test, it just a choice of your test. As long as you can define, okay, let's say if you want to hand over to the PO atau hand over to the stakeholder, you should have a matrix ataupun you should have a number saying that, okay, this is our project matrix. So benda ni dia ada this specific level of quality. So itu yang paling penting sebenarnya. Bukannya a matter of choice, because matter of choice is just an internal choice. So whether it's worth it or tak, it depends on your requirement. Kalau benda tu memerlukan, then it works for that lah. Right? Macam mana manage the workload while needing to deliver? I think this is more on leadership lah. I mean, leadership is a soft skill that you can get while you mentor someone or you guide your own orang bawah. Let's say for me, like me senior front end, so I have to monitor the junior, I have to monitor the interns, so I have to communicate well. Sebab of course if you want to strive to become a more product oriented developer, then you should take care of your product. If you're more on the code deliver oriented developer, then you only focus on deliverables lah. What's the smallest team size untuk FE? Seorang. What's that smallest size? Mana ada tu. The biggest, I don't know lah. For me 4 orang tu dah terlalu banyak lah. Tapi kadang-kadang dia ikut requirement, kadang-kadang dia pecahkan ikut team. So kalau smallest aku seorang lah. Then handing over code semua tu, yalah, it's on you lah. So dia of course there's an argument bila you kata kalau seorang tumbang macam mana apa jadi dengan projek tu. Of course sebab this is more a question more on the business side. Bukan business lah, I mean operation side. Sometimes you have to think a cost of bukan cost in term of duit sahaja. In term of cost of maintenance, you have to think about a cost of communication. Sebab dia tak semestinya one answer fits all. Benda-benda yang berkaitan dengan operation ni susah kita nak cari jawapan, sebab you have to go to the ground and actually see what's happening. Then you can give a specific answer. But the indicator, of course, you have to think about the code handover. That's why it is important for you to document everything. And even for me, I do my own personal documentation every time when I do the code. So that bila because I don't know whether today I'm here, tomorrow mungkin I na'udzubillah min zalik lah, mungkin I accident ke apa, or today I'm here, tomorrow I resign already 24 hours, who knows, right? So all these things, kalau you tak write the documentation, then it's on you lah, because you are the one who take the risk. So it does dia kena tahu lah. What is safe? Allah, sama kejap nanti aku jawab soalan tu. Wajib ke kena ada dedicated UI UX person in company? Jawapan aku depends on the strength of the brand. Kalau you want to emphasize on the brand, so of course you need the UI UX person. Sebab the UI UX ni aku selalu tekankan UI UX doesn't have to be button kena 5 pixel kena warna ni, tak. You have to also think about the user experience. And even baru-baru ni ada isu berkaitan dengan QR code restoran. Aku bukan nak argue sama ada whether it's relevant or not. the thing that I want to argue is that orang tak faham sebenarnya benda yang berkaitan dengan, contohnya kau rasa QR code tu tak sesuai untuk kau sebab kau rasa kau perlukan human interaction. That is UX, okay? That is UX. Tapi of course dia UX outside the system lah. Tapi it's still UX, okay? UI UX doesn't have to be kau design at Figma and it stops there. You have to do a lot of things. You have to do A/B testing. You have to do the user testing. You have to do the approval, blah blah blah. You have to understand the audience. You have to understand the brand. So all this stuff also under the umbrella of UX. Itu yang orang tak nampak payahnya UI UX. Sebab tu I cakap sama ada perlu kena ada dedicated UI UX. It depend on the strength of the brand. Kalau dia nak tekankan betul-betul dia nak emphasizekan brand and then the user experience, then yeah, you need the UI UX, dedicated UI UX. But most of the case, actually you don't. I have to say this. Most of the case is done. But when you go for a bigger company, a bigger product, of course they need UI UX because like they have to monitor all those design system and everything. Had the staff who wrote back code end up code tak boleh extend all features. Imagine putting all code dalam satu JS file yang get loaded through script tag. That's why I say you have to. That's why when it comes to hiring, okay, this is the thing. Kalau okay, ni kita cerita satu use case where aku cuba habis dalam pukul 11 suku lah kot. 9 suku 11 suku 2 jam lah. Okay, cukup lah. Sebab aku rasa korang pun dah ngantuk lah. Where engkau adalah orang yang dah ada dalam company and then you are hiring someone, right? So it's important for you to actually know the team. If let's say you feel like there's a problem, you have to be transparent. In a teamwork, if you don't be transparent, if you say, hey, this code quality is bad, then it's on you. Sebab this is the part of leadership yang orang tak nak ambil tahu. If you care of your product, if you care of your code, you have to be transparent with your team. Kalau you kata it is a bad code practice, you have to say it's a bad code practice. Diorang tak nak cakap, you mitigate kepada manager. Say, what should I do? Kalau you ada marah ni. Kalau contoh you rasa this team your team members deliver a bad quality of code, you have to discuss with your manager. Kalau your manager take an action, is good. Ataupun of course janganlah straight away you go to your manager. Of course you have to communicate with the developer themselves. So kadang-kadang diorang dengar je. I believe most of the junior yang I encounter, most of time they actually listen. They are more attentive to learning instead of they want to focus on their ego lah. So just say to them, okay, kita kena buat macam ni. Penting untuk code review. And if let's say they don't want to listen, then you go to the manager and say, hey, I have a teammate that actually do this stuff and stuff. What should I do? If let's say manager tak nak dengar, then whether you want to tahan ataupun you keluar, itu je lah kan. Sebab of course if you really take care of your code, supposed to be you already quality developer and company will love to have you. Okay, what is safe? Okay, alright. What is safe? Safe is boleh kata agile dalam agile. So kalau you ada agile, contoh let's say you ada contoh satu sprint 2 minggu. You bayangkan ada lagi skill yang ada lagi satu agile dalam satu agile. Maknanya dalam kita ada dua sprint punya scrum, kita ada lagi satu, kita bagi satu quarter punya scrum. Dia sprint dalam sprint. Tapi masalah je, jangan menyakitkan hati pasal safe ni. Marah ni. Dia orang ada ritual. Aku stress ni. Dia orang ada ritual. Kau kena hadap 2 hari untuk planning saja. Aku. Okay, but anyway, uh, Safe is just another ritual for different approach for agile lah. Method. Dia still agile tapi dia agile dan agile. Uh, Stress ni, baru habis ni. Kau ingat tak stress? Satu hari dengar cakap orang ke. Lepas tu gaduh dengan semua team. Kalau jenis yang kau plan untuk satu quarter semua jadi tak apa kak. Tiba-tiba tengah quarter kau kena replan. Buat apa kau plan in the first place? Marah ni. Alright. Put away lah sesi lain tadi. Alright. Sekejap aku dah tengok ada lagi soalan. Actually company sekarang Maxi Atlassian product. Weh kau jangan. Company aku semua benda kalau boleh nak guna. Sekarang ni dia orang guna Jira, dia orang guna Confluence, dia orang guna Jira Discovery, dia orang guna Atlas. Aku tak tahu dia orang nak pergi ke async ke dia nak pergi ke agile. Dia orang guna all these thing lah. So of course it is on operation lah. Biarlah dia orang decide. Dia pakai Excel jadi. Ini full package. Kanban on Scrum. Jira. Yelah. Jira ada Kanban juga. Okay, alright. Put that aside. Aku ungkit tajuk tu tiba-tiba aku dimarah. Alright. Alright. So lagi dalam 8 minit. 8 minit. Okay, 7 campur 5, 12 minit lagi. Before aku conclude everything. Okay lah, so back to the topic lah. Product manager need to know both code and UI UX. Oh, okay. Sorry. Aku tak nampak soalan kau tadi. Alright. Product manager need to know both code and UI UX. Okay. If you ask me, diorang kalau nak tahu is a bonus. Okay. Diorang doesn't have to be they don't have to be a technical guy. Tapi for me, a good product owner should know a bit of technical stuff. Tapi macam contoh, dekat my current company, diorang ada satu kita panggil Product Management Office, PMO. So when you start on board the company, ada certain PO diorang kena enroll satu course. Bukan enroll satu course lah, macam diorang ada benda lah, program yang diorang kena buat where you have to learn HTML dan CSS. Tapi you bukan learn HTML CSS for developing. You learn the HTML and CSS just to get on the same level of with the agile team, maknanya developers lah. So I think as long as you are aware, then it's good. That's why sometimes you can ada certain PO, they are a good PO because of previously they do the project they do development, but somehow they kind of like don't like the coding, but they love to manage a product, so they go for the PO path lah. So that is actually one of your career path if you want to look into that lah. But usually that kind of PO kind of PO, they are a really good PO lah, because they really understand the blockers, they already understand the dependencies, and even if let's say they don't know, biasanya it is your responsibility lah to make PO understand. But usually PO especially for a digital product, dia akan aware lah benda-benda ni. Alright. PO, PM versus tech lead, apa beza? Tech lead, okay, this is hard. Sebab kadang-kadang dia ada beza. Macam contoh dekat company aku, nama je pakai tech lead tapi sebenarnya dia adalah team lead ataupun biasa kita panggil engineer manager. So sepatutnya kalau kata team lead, biasanya dia manage the team lah. Tech lead ni biasanya dia lebih kepada macam IC sikit lah. Tapi bagi aku it depends on the company. It doesn't mean like the same stuff apply to all companies. Kalau contoh you terdetik nak pergi company yang offer tech lead, better you get clear of the task, the description for the tech lead. Alright. Tapi PO PO atau PM, PO ni product owner ataupun PM ni product manager, biasanya dia more kepada dia senang cerita dia adalah bridge between the stakeholders and programmer. So biasanya whether small company developer connect directly to the stakeholder, dialah yang kena hadap requirement, dialah yang kena bertekak dengan stakeholder. Biasanya company-company besar dia ada PO, supaya PO ni yang akan delegatekan, dialah yang bertekak dengan stakeholder, dialah yang menghadap market. Tapi developer akan more focus on pecahkan this kind of quality of the architecture. Tapi tech lead ni dia biasanya dia lebih kepada team lah. Dia bukan bridge antara tu. Tech lead cover tech lead mana aku nampak dia. Cover but tech lead cover tech, but POPM still squad base. Kita orang walaupun PO ada dalam different department. Okay, macam ni kita orang kalau kat my current company, developers kita orang ada dalam satu department we call R&D. Tapi sebab the reason why kita orang implement this is because we want to go for cross functional team. So instead of kita orang split department based on functionalities, kita orang split department based on niche. So contohnya department R&D, lepas tu kita ada department PO, tapi kita orang the specific PO and the specific team of developer dan R&D actually is a team, tapi is a across department. The reason why sebab dia orang senang nak communicate across department. Yep, I think that's it. Sekarang masa pukul berapa? 8 lagi 7 minit. Berbalik ke nak consider jumping to X Solar? Oh, terkejut sangat ni. Kenapa X Solar? Jangan cerita X Solar. Berbalik ke? Okay, alright, berbalik ke nak consider jumping to X Solar? Silalah. Apa tadi aku nampak ada nampak opening PHP dev. Silakan, no worries. Tapi PHP sebab kita orang kalau recruit PHP banyak kepada maintain legacy system lah. Kita orang yang new product ke apa semua, kita orang dah start guna Go. Lepas tu kita orang front end of course React, ada certain Angular, padan muka dapat Angular. Lepas tu even some of our PHP system kita orang PHP system kita orang dah start migrate to Go, kepada Go. So that's it lah. Tapi kalau masuk je okey je. Bagi aku X Solar ni dia punya developer culture dia agak kemas lah. React Dev kena buat Angular. Aduh, kelakar lah. Okay, alright. So, okay, back to the topic. Kita conclude balik topik kita hari ni untuk front end. So, kalau korang ada consider untuk masuk ke front end, there are some point yang tadi aku dah highlight kan. Ada benda beberapa lah. Bagi aku, dia tak semestinya spesifik pada front end. Dia tak semestinya spesifik ke... Dia tak semestinya spesifik kepada React, Angular, Vue, Svelte. Bagi aku, all this framework. Ataupun you nak go for vanilla pun silakan. Kalau you rasa you boleh go for vanilla JavaScript, maksudnya native JavaScript, silakan. Tak ada siapa halang pun. You nak pakai jQuery, silakan. Tapi, ada beberapa konsep yang kita orang tekankan bila kita buat assignment. Of course kita we will throw you the problem. Kita orang takkan go into details, tapi kita orang akan bagi requirement lah biasanya. So contohnya kita cakap okay, kena buat dashboard untuk display list of student based on the groups contohnya. So you are the one who should come out with breaking down the requirements. It's good kalau you ada tulis document, you documentize all this process. Walaupun I know it's kind of like time consuming, tapi kalau you manage to do that, biasanya memang you dah superb lah. Memang biasanya agak you punya position, whether you are recruited or not tu memang dah tinggi lah. Alright. And the second part is of course there's some part like kita nak tengok sama ada you actually aware of the code quality, whether you aware of this kita panggil conventions, whether you are aware of some tools yang perlu guna, whether you know whether it's a blockers or not. Alright. And the next part will be not really important, but it will be a good stuff if you know about it. The usage of tools, especially the automated tools like Gaslin, Prettier, uh, aku lupa lah apa nama GitHub tu. Um, or probably you are a bit aware of something like Dockerization, ataupun you be aware of TypeScript. Sebab kadang you have to see whether it's a dogmatic approach, whether it is sebab lain bahasa lain approach diorang ambil, so you have to know about that. Yeah, pre-commit hook. Dia ada nama tu, aku dah lupa dah sebenarnya apa nama dia. Di stack agnostic, yeah. Stack agnostic. Maknanya dia tak ada depend on the stack. So all this stuff lah. So dia kadang-kadang argument between whether which stack is powerful ataupun tu, for me is already because like the selection of tools pun you tak perlu nak tekankan sangat, sebab in the end when I hire you, I expect you to know a lot of stuff. I mean make things work lah, bukannya sitting with me arguing whether to, of course that you will have that space. It's not that it's not I mean you don't have that space. You have to create a space if you want to, I mean to create a healthy space. If let's say if you manage to get the job, you have to create a space to argue all these things. Jangan waktu you nak develop tu, waktu orang dah plan, waktu plan tu dah confirm, tiba-tiba waktu, jangan tanya aku, bukan aku develop website tu. Aku call kan. Aduh. Just kidding. No worries. Aku okay je. Tapi style. Mungkin dia saja buat lari. It's not a bug, it's a feature, okay? Okay, alright. So that's it apa yang aku nak terangkan malam ni. Aku rasa I hope you guys get some benefit, whether it's a for front end ke back end ke. I hope some of it can be beneficial for back end stuff as well. Yeah, I hope for this part you know what you want to learn next, and then what should you expect from the assignment, what should you expect from a bit for the interview as well, so that you can start escalate your career journey lah. Alright, so you don't have to play like apalah dekat waktu assignment tu, apalah yang kita nak buat, apalah yang kita nak letak. So actually you already know some stuff lah. Okay, I think that's it. Apa-apa discussion lain, I will let you guys do the discussion outside the event. Thank you everyone for listening, and even I'm really glad that the master that I look up for, Malcolm joined us just now. Aku tak expect Malcolm join. Sikit Mike. Okay, that's it. Aku pun okay lah. I say I'm not that perfect guy as well. Of course, there are some part aku tak tahu juga, tapi okay, aku ada benda yang aku tak tahu, so I hope it's not just you learn all this stuff, also I learn as well. Alright, that's it guys. I don't want to prolong this. Thank you guys. So good night. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Bye.